Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to this recap episode of Flow Over Fear. And today I'm going to talk about the interview that I just had with Calvin Chin. Calvin has been a friend of mine for a couple of years through a mastermind that we've both been a part of. And he now runs his own mastermind called Zen Coast University with his wife. And they teach people how to invest in real estate, but not only that, invest with impact and with service and how they can give back to their own communities as well. It's a very powerful model that transcends the idea of just investing for the sake of becoming a wealthy person, because that doesn't drive the happiness. Mission, purpose, service drives happiness. And that's where we can combine both those elements of building ourselves into a financial position where we can be of the most impactful service to others. That's what Calvin and his wife are building together. As an investor himself, he has built a portfolio valued at over $25 million with over 150 units under management. And he's built that essentially over time, one step at a time. It started a few years ago with just a house hack, and a house hack being he bought a home and in the Bay Area, which is one of the most expensive markets anywhere, and especially within the last few years, it's been crazy. But he bought a condo. He split it up so that he rented out part of the condo to somebody else, had them pay a good portion of his mortgage. So he ended up paying about $800 of his own mortgage to live in San Francisco in the Bay Area. That's how he got his start in real estate. Then he invested out in Texas. He went on to single family homes. And then he built up to multifamily and eventually built up to Airbnbs and apartment buildings. And when we talked about how he developed there, each one of those scale ups there was an element of fear that got into that, especially when it got to adding the zeros on the apartment building, when you start playing at that level. And that's where it started to make a big difference. But there was a lot of fear when he leveled up in that regard. And it's a fear that a lot of us tend to feel, especially when we think about investing. A lot of us get excited when we think about that very, very big thing, that very, very big phrase that we call real estate, where we think about it and we think about the wealth that we can build through it. And we hear everywhere that that's one of the most powerful wealth building areas that we can build on. But we get afraid. We get afraid because we're afraid that by putting whatever money we put into there, it will lead to financial ruin, or it will lead to lawsuits, or it will lead to all sorts of other things or uncertainties that we can't expect. But by having the courage to lean into that and really look at the analytics of those types of deals, know that we're getting into those the right way. And by no means am I any kind of financial advisor, so take this with a grain of salt. And this is not financial advice whatsoever. But when if we want to have the biggest impact in our lives, we have to be more than just tied to the income we're getting from our W-2 jobs. We don't necessarily have to leave those positions. We don't necessarily have to, we don't necessarily have to aspire to leave a job. If we enjoy what we're doing, that's great. But having another source of security, having multiple ways of developing income, maybe even one of those ways being real estate, is a great way to help with our security, our individual security. So it's worth looking into. And again, this is not financial advice because I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have any letters after my name. But one of the things that, Calvin dropped a lot of great knowledge bombs in this episode, and I suggest you listen to it. And one of the ways he talked about how he succeeded in what he did, because from outside appearances, it looks like, he's an overnight success. He was, working in a W-2. 5 years later, he's financially free. But over that time, he worked consistently to build on it, as we just talked about, leveling up from that condo that he was sharing to getting single family homes, to multifamily, to apartments. It was consistently working on that and consistently failing, consistently making mistakes and learning from them that elevated him. He talked about one particular mistake he made early on, where he lent, where he became a private money lender. He lent $100,000 on a handshake to somebody and ended up losing that money. And, from there, he gave up on the whole thing and went back to his 9-to-5 job. No, he did not do that. I'm just joking, but he didn't do that. He persisted. He looked at that as a mistake that they could learn from. And one of the lessons he learned from that is the ability to recover from failure fast. And when I asked him to expand on that, he mentioned that his wife had once told him that if it doesn't impact you in 5 years, if it's not going to impact you in 5 years, then don't dwell on it for more than 5 minutes. And that's a powerful lesson. It frees us from being prisoners to our failures for too long. Because if we're dwelling on it for longer than 5 minutes, we're all in our minds then. Chances are 5 years from now, if we can look back and it doesn't really have an impact on it, or we learned a lesson that we can grow from, well, then we're probably going to be better off than we were before that mistake was made. As long as we get a lesson from that mistake. Think about a mistake you might have made 5 years ago. It's maybe something that seemed really, really big at the time. Is it impacting you negatively now? Well, if it's not, then chances are you've learned from it and you can get something from it. One of the powerful tools that Calvin used to succeed as well was something we bring up over and over and over again in the show, and something that comes up over and over and over again, which is community. He talked about the power of mentorship in his life and how that helped him to succeed and grow. And one of his final lessons, one of the lessons he said for anybody that's just starting out or just having that dream forming, where they still face that fear of taking that next vital step, is to be strategic with who you surround yourself with. Again, coming down to community. Not just, do these people have the material possessions that you want? More than that, what are their values? What do they love? What do they represent in the world? Where do they serve? How do they serve? Those are the important aspects. Don't just look at people that have things that you want. Look for mentors, look for guides, look for communities that are filled with people that are serving the way you want, that show up in the world the way you want to show up in the world, that are serving the world the way that you want to serve. When you look back on your deathbed, as Calvin had said in this interview, when he looks back, does he want to look back on something with pride? That's why he created, with his wife, Zen Coast University, to help people to achieve what they have achieved. And working with a spouse or a loved one is not often an easy thing, but Calvin and his wife have become something of a power couple on that front. They've been together quite a while. They've been investors together. They've been partners in this world for a long time, and now they're partners with Zen Coast University and helping people to succeed. And one of the important lessons they've learned from being partners together is that the business has to be separated from the personal life. That they have to know clearly what their strengths and weaknesses are. And this was a powerful lesson for anybody that's in a partnership, both on a personal level and on a business level. that recognizing those strengths and weaknesses and being clear with it, not just externally with the other person, but with it internally, knowing what yours are. I know that Calvin and I both share the love of spreadsheets, of creating spreadsheets, but knowing that we're not always getting the validation on having created those spreadsheets, even though they are totally awesome and they've got tons of pivot charts. But there are strengths and weaknesses that we all have that we have to acknowledge. We also have to acknowledge that self-doubt is always going to play a role within anything that we do where we're trying to become a high achiever. And mindset is key for that process. When Calvin left his job, or when he was thinking of leaving his job, he built his income from real estate to the point that he didn't really need the income from his job anymore. But he was still, there was still that level of golden handcuffs, or, that the income coming from it that was regular was still good. And one of the things that his mindset, he had to come to the realization of the mindset of, was disconnecting from that financial bind first, that financial bind of the paycheck, before even quitting, recognizing that wasn't that necessary for him. And, in those first few months, of course, after quitting his job, there was a lot of fear. There's a lot of, what ifs and things like that rose up. But ultimately, through grounding his mindset, he got through it. Part of that mindset includes an evening and a morning routine, where he talked about simple things like getting your clothes ready for the morning and the evening before, so that you don't have to think about it when you wake up. You can free your mind for other things. Or when you have, and just having an empowering morning routine is very important. So how are you incorporating things into your morning routine or your evening routine? And are you strategically aligning yourself? Who are you strategically surrounding yourself with? People that are aligned with your values? And are you looking at something that you have a passion about from the outside in? And are you afraid of pursuing that passion for some reason? And what's the nature of that fear? If you can get to the root of those, you can get to the root of where you want to serve in the world. And when you find where you want to serve in the world, you may be able to find that next valuable step for you. It doesn't have to mean quitting your job or leaving a career or things like that, though it could if you're not fulfilled or happy. But it does mean that you can pursue that passion in your life. And finding financial freedom is one way to do that. And doing that through real estate is a very powerful way of finding that. And so, if you haven't already, listen to this interview with Calvin Chin. Find out how he became a true person of service in the world, how he gained his own financial freedom, and learn how he now lives by the philosophy that if he can help 10 people become millionaires, then that's the key. That's the key question. The key question is not how can I become a millionaire, but how can I help, say, 10 people become millionaires? And then, and now that he's doing that, he himself is one as well. So check out the episode. It was really good. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me on this recap episode of Flow Over Fear. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.